What happens when a billionaire owner, disguised as an everyday traveler, uncovers the corruption poisoning his own airline? A bold fight for justice begins, challenging power, shattering prejudice, and rewriting the rules of what's possible. Before we dive in, let us know what time you're listening to this and where you're from. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The morning sun cast its golden light over the vast expanse of John F. Kennedy International Airport, a gateway connecting New York City to the rest of the world. Inside Terminal 4, the air buzzed with the sounds of boarding calls, the rolling of suitcases, and the constant hum of countless voices. Each traveler, a reflection of the diverse mosaic that was New York, carried their own unique story. Different backgrounds, different cultures, different dreams. The terminal itself seemed alive with the pulse of the world converging under one roof. Giant LED screens adorned the terminal walls, flashing sleek commercials for Blue Horizon Airlines. The tagline, "Where you're always valued," glowed brightly, promising every passenger an unparalleled travel experience. But beneath the polished surface of these advertisements, reality often told a different story. The airport was a study in contrasts. At one end of the terminal, the economy-class check-in counters were overwhelmed with long lines of weary travelers, disheveled from the demands of their journey. Luggage was shuffled, children clung to their parents, and tempers flared as complaints about delayed flights or excess baggage fees filled the air. At the other end, the VIP section gleamed with opulence. Here, a select few breezed through check-in, greeted by attendants offering warm smiles, personalized service, and an almost palpable air of superiority. Amidst this controlled chaos stood Marcus Taylor, dressed inconspicuously in a plain white t-shirt, dark jeans, and well-worn sneakers. A black backpack hung casually over his shoulder, blending him seamlessly into the crowd of everyday travelers. Few would have guessed that this unassuming man was one of the wealthiest individuals in the country, the very owner of Blue Horizon Airlines. Marcus was a man of quiet power. He had built his empire from the ground up, defying every stereotype and breaking through barriers that would have stopped most others in their tracks. But today, he wasn't here as a billionaire or CEO. Today, he was simply another passenger. As he walked slowly through the terminal, his sharp eyes took in every detail. At the economy check-in counter, he noticed a middle-aged black woman arguing with a staff member. Her voice quivered with frustration as she tried to explain that her luggage met the weight requirements. Yet, the agent barely looked up from his computer, responding curtly. Nearby, a young Latino man was stopped at the security checkpoint for an additional search, even though he had already cleared the metal detector without incident. Marcus clenched his jaw. These weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of something much deeper. The VIP check-in counter for Blue Horizon gleamed under the bright terminal lights. Polished marble and gold accents screamed exclusivity. Behind the counter stood Amanda Walters, her uniform perfectly pressed, her blonde hair pulled tightly into a bun. At first glance, she appeared every bit the professional, but a subtle curl of her lips, a smirk that seemed more like disdain than warmth, betrayed something darker beneath her polished exterior. Marcus stepped forward, handing over his ticket and ID with the same quiet demeanor he always carried. Amanda's eyes flicked up to him, scanning his plain attire with a look of subtle judgment. Her expression faltered for a moment before she forced a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Are you sure you're in the right line?" she asked, her tone laced with condescension. "Yes, I'm quite sure," Marcus replied evenly. Amanda pursed her lips, inspecting his ID as if looking for flaws. She turned to her computer, fingers moving slowly across the keyboard. The seconds dragged by uncomfortably. The only sound between them was the tapping of her nails against the keys. "This ticket seems unusual," she murmured, her voice carrying just loud enough for others nearby to hear. "I'll need to verify this with a supervisor." Marcus remained calm. "There's nothing unusual about it. It's a confirmed booking. First-class seat 1A. Amanda raised a brow but said nothing. Instead, she picked up the phone, speaking softly into the receiver. Marcus stood silently, his patience beginning to wear thin. A few sharply dressed travelers glanced his way, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Several minutes later, the soft murmur of Amanda's conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Robert Klein, the manager of Blue Horizon's JFK operations. Dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, his polished leather shoes clicked against the floor with the Audi. Robert exuded authority, but there was an arrogance in the way he carried himself. His eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus, his gaze lingering longer than necessary. "Is there a problem here?" Robert asked, briefly glancing at Amanda before turning his attention to Marcus. Amanda straightened, lowering her voice to a deferential tone. "Mr. Klein, I just needed confirmation on this gentleman's ticket. It seemed unusual for this counter." Robert didn't respond immediately. Instead, he examined Marcus with an evaluative gaze, his lips curving into a tight, dismissive smile. "Everything appears to be in order," Robert said, handing the ticket back to Amanda with a curt nod. "Make sure to expedite this, please." "Yes, Mr. Klein," Amanda replied, her tone betraying reluctance. Robert turned back to Marcus, offering a handshake that felt more like a formality than a genuine gesture. "Enjoy your flight," he said smoothly, though his voice lacked sincerity. Marcus met his gaze with quiet confidence. "Thank you." As Marcus walked away, the weight of what had just transpired settled heavily on him. Amanda's actions weren't simply a case of poor customer service. They were a reflection of something much deeper. The culture at Blue Horizon valued appearance and status over respect and fairness. Robert's indifference only confirmed Marcus's growing suspicion. This wasn't an isolated incident. Boarding the plane, Marcus took his seat in the spacious first-class cabin. The plush leather seat cushions and the impeccable service felt luxurious, but the tension from his earlier encounter still lingered. As flight attendants moved gracefully through the cabin, Marcus couldn't help but notice Amanda again. She was stationed a few rows ahead now, her smile warmer and more genuine as she interacted with passengers who fit the unspoken mold of what she deemed VIP. Marcus leaned back in his seat, letting his gaze drift out the window to the bustling tarmac below. His mind churned with a storm of frustration and resolve. This wasn't just about Amanda or Robert. It was about the culture they represented, the systemic biases and corruption that were poisoning the airline he had built from the ground up. As the plane soared into the sky, Marcus's thoughts remained fixated on the task ahead. The journey to Los Angeles wasn't just about getting from one place to another. It was about exposing every layer of dysfunction that had seeped into Blue Horizon. From the frontline staff to the upper echelons of management, Marcus wasn't here simply to observe. He was here to change things. He would uncover the truth, no matter how deep he had to dig. The hum of the aircraft filled the cabin, passengers settling into their seats. Marcus glanced around, taking in the luxury of his surroundings, but his thoughts remained sharply focused. Amanda moved briskly through the aisle, her hair perfectly styled and her smile sharp as ever. Yet Marcus couldn't forget the subtle undercurrent of disdain he had witnessed earlier. A man sitting a few rows ahead, James Porter, a wealthy executive whose gold watch gleamed under the cabin lights, snapped his fingers for attention. Amanda was at his side almost instantly, eager to fulfill his every request. "Can I get a glass of that Sauvignon Blanc? And maybe some almonds too?" Porter asked with a casual air of entitlement. "Of course, Mr. Porter," Amanda replied warmly, her tone as accommodating as it could be. She returned moments later with the wine and almonds, engaging in polite conversation with Porter about his business trip. Marcus watched as Amanda laughed at his jokes, her smile bright and eager. It was an image of flawless service, but it was the kind of service that only seemed to be reserved for a select few. Marcus raised a hand, politely signaling for Amanda's attention when she passed. She walked over, her expression neutral, bracing herself for what she undoubtedly expected to be another unworthy request. "Yes?" she asked curtly. "I'd like a glass of water, please," Marcus said evenly. Amanda hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the other passengers before nodding. "I'll get that for you in just a moment," she said, though the moment stretched into several uncomfortable minutes. Marcus noticed her tending to another passenger, a woman requesting a blanket. The minutes dragged by until Amanda finally returned, placing the glass of water on his tray table with a quick nod. "Thank you," Marcus said, his tone calm but firm. Amanda didn't respond. She simply walked away, leaving him with nothing more than a perfunctory nod. Nearby passengers seemed to notice the exchange, one woman in particular, sitting across the aisle in an elegant navy dress with pearls, cast a curious glance his way. She clearly scrutinized his casual attire, trying to reconcile his presence in first class. Marcus exhaled slowly, determined not to let their stares get to him. Nearby passengers seemed to notice the exchange. One woman in particular, sitting across the aisle in an elegant navy dress with pearls, cast a curious glance his way. She clearly scrutinized his casual attire, trying to reconcile his presence in first class. Marcus exhaled slowly, determined not to let their stares get to him. Marcus had built Blue Horizon to be a company that valued equality and professionalism. However, after what he witnessed on a recent flight, his belief in the company was shattered. The culture had become one of disrespect and favoritism. Marcus decided that it was no longer time to stay silent. He wanted to restore his company to its true purpose. After making this decision, Marcus began his investigation. Robert Clean, a senior manager, was at the center of everything wrong with the company. His leadership undermined the core values of Blue Horizon. He treated employees poorly and made decisions based on favoritism rather than fairness. Marcus decided he needed to gather evidence against Robert. Linda Harper, a flight attendant who still upheld the company's original values, came forward to help Marcus. She uncovered crucial information about Robert. Linda discovered that Robert was not only mistreating employees, but also using company funds for personal deals. With the evidence in hand, Marcus instructed his legal team to initiate an internal audit. It was time to expose Robert's corruption, but during this time, Linda began to feel the heat from Amanda and Robert. Marcus knew he had to be careful and act strategically. Marcus carefully planned his next steps. His goal wasn't just to remove Robert, it was to reshape the company's culture. He was determined to rebuild Blue Horizon into an organization that truly lived up to its values. This was going to be a long and difficult journey, but Marcus's determination remained strong. He was committed to turning his company into a fair and outstanding institution once again. "I don't know if this is the right thing to do," Carter began nervously, "but I've seen too much to stay silent." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his voice calm. Carter hesitated before continuing. "Robert's been covering up violations for years. He's got people on his payroll who manipulate reports, sweep complaints under the rug, that sort of thing. A lot of us know about it, but no one's willing to speak up." "Why are you telling me this now?" Marcus pressed. "Because I heard about what you're doing," Carter replied, "and because I'm tired of watching good people get thrown under the bus while Robert lines his pockets." Marcus's resolve hardened. Carter's confession confirmed his suspicions, but it also gave him the final nudge he needed. "Thank you for trusting me," Marcus said. "I'm going to fix this, but I'll need your help to make sure Robert doesn't see it coming." That night, Marcus made his decision. He contacted Blue Horizon's legal and HR departments, instructing them to initiate a comprehensive internal audit. He provided them with all the evidence he and Linda had gathered, ensuring they had enough to act decisively. The following morning, Marcus called for a company-wide emergency meeting at Blue Horizon's New York headquarters. Every key manager, including Robert Clean, was summoned. The agenda was vague, but the tone was unmistakable. This was a meeting no one could afford to miss. As Marcus prepared for the meeting, a knock sounded at his door. It was Linda. Her expression was a mixture of nerves and determination. "I heard about the meeting," she said. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus nodded. "It's time." But Linda looked at him seriously. "Robert's not going to go down without a fight." "I know," Marcus said, "but this isn't just about him. It's about setting things right for everyone." Linda gave him a faint smile. "For what it's worth, you've already made a difference. People are starting to believe that change is possible." Her words gave Marcus a surge of confidence. As she left, he turned back to his desk, a sense of calm settling over him. The road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready. Marcus's voice rang out, sharp and unwavering, cutting through the tension that had gripped the room. "Hard choices need to be made. Robert, He continued, his words deliberate. You've exploited your position, turned a blind eye to unethical practices, and built an empire on the backs of those who work tirelessly under you. That's not leadership. That's self-serving corruption. Robert shot up from his chair, the loud scrape of it against the floor punctuating the sudden shift in the atmosphere. Do you honestly believe this company would even exist without me? I've kept it running smoothly for years. Years. You can't just waltz in here and tear everything down that I've built. His voice was defensive, tinged with anger. Marcus didn't flinch. He stood tall, his presence commanding the room. What you've built is nothing more than a house of cards. Marcus stood tall, addressing the room with authority. What you've built is fragile, Robert. It's about to collapse. He announced Robert Klein's immediate suspension and outlined reforms to rebuild the company's core values: trust, integrity, and transparency. This company will no longer run on fear, Marcus promised. He introduced plans for equity and inclusion training, leadership development, and a whistleblower system to ensure accountability. Promoting Linda Harper to a supervisory role was his first step in empowering dedicated employees. Despite resistance from Robert and certain stakeholders, Marcus defended his vision. At a board meeting, he emphasized the long-term benefits of these reforms, even if they came at a cost. If we don't change, we risk everything: loyalty, customers, and employees. During a public address, Marcus exposed Robert's financial misconduct and toxic leadership. Linda supported him, and a major shareholder backed Marcus's vision. Robert was swiftly terminated. In the weeks that followed, Robert's actions were exposed in the media, and Marcus pushed forward with his reforms: leadership training, anonymous reporting, and employee councils. With the funds recovered from Robert's misconduct, Marcus reinvested in employee development, signaling a new era for Blue Horizon. Linda whispered, "You did it." Marcus replied, "No, we did it. This is just the beginning." His journey had only just begun.